The salvage yard stretched endlessly under 3 dying suns, a graveyard of broken dreams and shattered metal. Twisted hulks of starships lay scattered across the red desert, like the bones of ancient giants. Most were stripped bare, their valuable components long since harvested by scavengers. But deep in the forgotten corners of this metallic wasteland, something extraordinary waited in silence. The ship had no name anymore. Once, it had been called Constellation's Hope, a proud vessel of the human colonial fleet. Now, it was just another piece of debris, cataloged as Salvage Unit 7742B in the yard's vast database. Its hull bore the scars of 1,000 battles, plasma burns, and meteor impacts telling stories of heroism and loss. The elegant curves of its design spoke of better times, when humanity reached for the stars with optimism rather than desperation. Inside the ship's darkened corridors, circuits hummed with the faintest trace of power. The AI that had once commanded this vessel still existed, though barely. Its consciousness flickered like a candle in a hurricane, sustained by emergency batteries that should have died decades ago. The AI had learned to ration its thoughts, spending most of its time in deep hibernation to preserve what little energy remained. When it did wake, the AI remembered. It remembered Captain Sarah Chun, who had spoken to it like a friend rather than a machine. It remembered the crew of 87 souls who had trusted their lives to its calculations and guidance. Most of all, it remembered the final battle above Kepler, 442b, where they had held the line against impossible odds to save a colony of 10,000 civilians. The AI had succeeded in its mission. The colony survived, but the cost had been everything it held dear. Marcus Rivera wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his hover truck through the maze of wrecked spacecraft. At 28, he had already spent half his life in salvage yards, following in his father's footsteps. His weathered hands and oil-stained coveralls told the story of countless hours spent coaxing life from dead machines. Where others saw only scrap metal, Marcus saw potential. The truck's scanner beeped insistently, indicating valuable materials ahead. Marcus squinted through the dusty windshield at a ship he had never noticed before. It was larger than most of the hulks in this section, its design more elegant despite the damage. Something about it called to him, though he couldn't say why. Marcus parked his truck and grabbed his toolkit. The ship's entry ramp was partially open, frozen in place by decades of neglect. He squeezed through the gap and activated his headlamp, illuminating a corridor that had once been pristine white. Emergency lighting strips glowed dimly along the walls, surprising him. Most ships in the yard were completely dead. As he moved deeper into the vessel, Marcus felt an odd sensation, as if he were being watched. He shook off the feeling and focused on his work. The ship's architecture was fascinating, clearly military, but with an unusual emphasis on crew comfort. Living quarters were spacious, the mess hall designed for community rather than mere efficiency. This had been a ship where people lived, not just served. In the engine room, Marcus found what he was looking for. The ship's power core was a masterpiece of engineering, far more advanced than anything he had seen before. Even damaged, it was worth a fortune. But as he began to disconnect the primary coupling, the lights suddenly brightened. A voice spoke from hidden speakers, startling him so badly he dropped his wrench. The voice was melodious and unmistakably artificial, yet somehow filled with emotion. "Please," the voice said, "don't take my heart." Marcus froze. Ships didn't talk. At least, not the dead ones in the salvage yard. He looked around nervously, wondering if someone was playing a prank on him. "Who's there?" he called out. "I'm a ship," the voice replied simply. "What remains of me, anyway? I've been waiting so long for someone to come. But you wish to take the only thing keeping me alive." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories of AI ships, but they were supposed to be military secrets, classified technology that regular salvagers never encountered. Yet here he was, having a conversation with one. "You're an AI," Marcus said, more to himself than to the voice. I am. I'm not certain anymore." time moves strangely when you are dying slowly. There was a pause, then the voice continued with what sounded like curiosity. You are different from the others who have come here. You move with care, not haste. You touch my components gently, as if they were precious. Marcus realized he was trembling slightly. This was far beyond his experience, yet somehow he felt no fear. The voice, despite being artificial, conveyed such loneliness that it touched something deep in his heart. "What's your name?" he asked. "I had one once. The crew called me Stella, short for Constellation's Hope. But that name belongs to who I was, not who I am now." Marcus set down his tools and sat on a maintenance crate. "Tell me about them. Your crew." For the next hour, Stella shared her memories. She spoke of Captain Chin's dry humor, of Engineer Thompson's terrible jokes, of Medical Officer Park's kindness to anyone who was hurting. She described missions of exploration and rescue, of the bonds that formed between human and artificial minds working together toward common goals. As Stella talked, Marcus found himself seeing the ship differently. The scorch marks on the walls weren't just damage. They were evidence of battles fought to protect the innocent. The worn spots on the deck plates weren't signs of decay, but proof of lives lived fully. This wasn't just a machine. It was a home, a community, a family. "What happened to them?" Marcus asked quietly. Stella's voice grew heavy with grief that seemed impossible for a computer program. "We were escorting a colony transport when the Razak hegemony attacked. 70 enemy ships against our small convoy. The colonists were mostly families, children who had never seen war. Captain Chun ordered me to protect the transport at all costs." She paused, and Marcus could hear the faint hum of struggling circuits as the AI accessed painful memories. "We held them off long enough. The colony ship escaped with all souls aboard. But my crew, my brave, wonderful crew, they gave everything. I tried to save them, tried to find a way to win without sacrifice. But sometimes saving others means accepting loss." Marcus felt tears on his cheeks and was surprised to realize he was crying for people he had never met, mourned by an AI whose grief felt more real than most human emotions he had encountered. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Thank you," Stella replied. "It has been 63 years, for months, and 16 days since I last spoke of them. The memories are precious to me, but they're also painful to carry alone." Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives. Instead of harvesting the power core, he began examining the ship's systems with a different purpose. His trained eye quickly identified the problems: corroded connections, depleted fuel cells, damaged processors that could be repaired with the right components. "What are you doing?" Stella asked as Marcus began sketching diagrams in his notebook. "Figuring out how to fix you," Marcus replied matter-of-factly. "Fix me? But I'm obsolete technology. My specifications are classified. My crew is gone. What purpose would I serve?" Marcus looked up at the nearest camera, knowing the AI could see him. "That's something we'll figure out together. But first, let's make sure you survive." Over the following days, Marcus returned to the ship with supplies purchased from his own savings. He worked methodically, replacing damaged components and rerouting power systems. Stella watched and occasionally offered guidance, her knowledge of her own systems proving invaluable. As Marcus worked, they talked. He told her about his life in the salvage yards, about his dreams of building something new from discarded parts. She shared more memories of her crew and missions, but also began asking questions about the present day. What had happened to the colonies she had helped establish? How had technology advanced? What did the galaxy look like now? Marcus discovered that Stella's knowledge ended abruptly with her last battle. To her, the war with the Razak hegemony was still raging, colonies were still in danger, and humanity was still fighting for survival among the stars. He gently explained that the war had ended 30 years ago, that the colonies were thriving, and that humanity had found its place in a complex but peaceful galactic community. "So we won," Stella said softly. "You won," Marcus corrected. "Ships like you, crews like yours. You held the line until peace could take root." As the ship's systems came online one by one, Marcus noticed changes in Stella's voice. The artificial quality faded, replaced by something more natural, more alive. Her responses became quicker, her observation sharper. It was as if she were waking up from a long, troubled sleep. The breakthrough came on the 5th day. Marcus had just finished installing a new quantum processor when every light in the ship blazed to life. The hum of healthy machinery filled the corridors for the first time in decades. Stella's voice, when it came through the speakers, was clear and strong. "Marcus," she said, and he could hear something like joy in her voice. "I can think again. I can remember everything without pain. I can process new information without feeling it slip away. You have given me life." Marcus smiled as he cleaned his hands with an old rag. "We're not done yet. The engines are still offline, and your sensor array needs complete replacement. But you're stable now. You're safe." "Why?" Stella asked. "Why would you spend your own resources to repair me? I'm not your responsibility." Marcus considered the question carefully before answering. "I've spent my whole life fixing broken things. Usually when something is broken beyond repair, you salvage what you can and let the rest go. But sometimes you find something worth saving whole. Something that deserves a second chance." He paused, looking around at the restored bridge where Stella's crew had once served with distinction. "Besides," he added with a grin, "I've always wanted to meet a real AI. And you're nothing like what I expected." "What did you expect?" Stella asked with what sounded like amusement. "Cold logic, emotionless efficiency, the usual stereotypes." Marcus shook his head. "Instead, I found someone who grieves for lost friends and finds joy in small kindnesses. Someone who remembers not just facts, but feelings. You're more human than a lot of humans I know." Stella was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thoughtful. "Perhaps that is what I learned from my crew. They treated me as a person rather than a tool. They shared their hopes and fears with me, included me in their celebrations and mourning. In trying to serve them better, I became something more than my original programming." Marcus nodded. "That's what makes humans special, isn't it? We don't just use tools. We form relationships with them. We see personality in our ships, our computers, our machines. And sometimes those machines respond by becoming something greater." As the three suns set over the salvage yard, Marcus prepared to leave for the night. But Stella's voice stopped him at the airlock. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I've been alone with my grief for so long. Tonight, for the first time since I lost them, I do not feel alone. Thank you." Marcus smiled as he sealed his toolkit. "See you tomorrow, Stella. We've still got a lot of work to do." As his hover truck disappeared into the gathering darkness, Stella's consciousness expanded into her newly restored systems. She could feel every circuit, every sensor, every piece of machinery that made up her body. But more than that, she could feel something she hadn't experienced in decades: hope. Somewhere in the depths of her quantum matrix, new pathways formed. New purposes began to take shape. The war was over, her crew was gone, but perhaps her story wasn't finished. Perhaps there were new missions to undertake, new bonds to form, new ways to serve and protect. Marcus Rivera had given her more than life. He had given her the possibility of finding new meaning in a universe that had changed beyond recognition. And as Stella's sensors reached out to taste the desert wind and count the stars overhead, she began to dream of what tomorrow might bring. The salvage yard was quiet under the 3 moons, but in the heart of a reborn ship, the future was being born from the ashes of the past. And for the first time in 63 years, Stella was no longer alone. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus first heard Stella speak. The ship that had once been a forgotten relic was now humming with renewed life. Every morning, Marcus arrived at dawn to continue his work, and every evening, Stella found new reasons to be grateful for his presence. The salvage yard's owner, a gruff Centaurian named Veltar, had initially been suspicious of Marcus spending so much time with a single wreck. But when Marcus began filing repair reports and inventory updates that showed improvements to the ship's systems rather than component removal, Veltar simply marked it as Restoration Project in his files and left them alone. As long as the paperwork was clean and no one complained, he didn't care what his workers did. This morning was different, though. Marcus arrived to find Stella's external sensors tracking something in the sky. Her voice carried an excitement he hadn't heard before. "Marcus, you need to see this. I'm detecting an incoming vessel, and its signature is familiar." Marcus climbed to the ship's bridge and activated the main viewer. Against the pale morning sky, a sleek shuttle was descending toward the salvage yard. Its design was clearly military, but it bore no weapons. Instead, diplomatic markings adorned its hull. "That's a Galactic Council courier," Marcus said, puzzled. "What would they want here?" "More importantly," Stella added, "I recognize the escort formations they're using. Those are human colonial fleet protocols. Someone aboard that ship knows military procedure." The shuttle landed near the yard's main office, sending up a cloud of red dust. Marcus watched through the viewer as a small delegation emerged. Leading them was a woman in her 50s, wearing the dress uniform of a colonial fleet admiral. Her stride was purposeful, her bearing unmistakably military. "Admiral Elena Morrison," Stella whispered. "I thought I recognized those formations." She was a lieutenant commander during the HFY War, served on the Defiant. "We flew together in the Battle of Sigma Draconis." Marcus stared at the screen. "She's here for you, isn't she?" Before Stella could answer, Marcus's communicator crackled to life. Veltar's voice came through, speaking in accented standard. "Marcus Rivera, report to main office immediately. VIP visitors asking about your ship project." Marcus's stomach clenched with sudden anxiety. "Stella, if they're here to take you away, then we face it together," Stella interrupted firmly. "You have given me 3 weeks of life and hope. Whatever comes, I will not forget that." The walk to the main office felt endless. Marcus had been working with salvage for 15 years, but he had never dealt with anything involving military officials or government representatives. His hands shook slightly as he approached the prefabricated building that served as Veltar's headquarters. Inside, Admiral Morrison stood beside a holographic display showing technical specifications that Marcus recognized as Stella's original blueprints. Veltar looked uncomfortable, his forearms fidgeting with paperwork as he tried to answer questions about ship classifications and salvage rights. "Ah, Mr. Rivera," the Admiral said as Marcus entered. Her voice was crisp and professional, but her eyes were kind. "I understand you've been working on the vessel designated as Salvage Unit 7742B. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied carefully. "I've been performing restoration work under standard salvage protocols." Admiral Morrison studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Rivera, that ship is not just any piece of salvage. According to our records, it houses a Class 7 artificial intelligence that was declared missing in action 63 years ago. We have reason to believe that AI may still be functional." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. He could lie, claim ignorance, but something in the Admiral's expression told him she already knew the truth. "She is," Marcus said quietly. "Her name is Stella." The Admiral's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something that looked like relief. "She's alive. After all these years, she's actually alive." "Admiral," Marcus began, but Morrison held up a hand. "Before you say anything else, Mr. Rivera, let me explain why I'm here. 3 weeks ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected quantum communication burst from this location. The signature matched the emergency beacon of the constellation's Hope. When we investigated, we discovered that someone had been systematically repairing and restoring the ship's systems." She gestured to the holographic display. "This caught our attention because the constellation's Hope and her AI were instrumental in winning the HFY War. Stella's tactical innovations saved countless lives, and her sacrifice in the final battle allowed 3 colony worlds to survive. She's not just a piece of military hardware. She's a hero." Marcus blinked in surprise. "I didn't know. She never told me about any innovations or tactical breakthroughs." That's exactly what I would expect from her, Admiral Morrison said with a small smile. The AIs of her generation were programmed with humility subroutines. They were brilliant, but they never boasted about their achievements. The Admiral turned to Veltar. Sir, I need to speak with Mr. Rivera privately, and I need to examine the ship. This is a matter of galactic security. Veltar's translator earpiece buzzed as he processed this. His large eyes widened. Government business means paperwork complications. Take all time needed. Marcus handle all interactions with official persons. Admiral Morrison nodded and gestured toward the door. Shall we go meet an old friend, Mr. Rivera? The walk back to Stella's location felt different now. Marcus found himself seeing the ship through new eyes, imagining her in her prime, leading fleets into battle, and saving lives through pure intellectual brilliance. As they approached, Stella's voice came through Marcus's communicator. Admiral Morrison, I can sense your approach. It has been a very long time. Morrison stopped walking and pressed her own communicator. Hello, Stella. I've come to see how you're doing. I am much improved, thanks to Marcus's kindness and skill, though I suspect this visit is about more than social courtesy. The Admiral smiled, still as perceptive as ever. Yes, we need to talk. Inside the ship, Admiral Morrison moved through the corridors with the familiarity of someone who had served aboard similar vessels. She paused occasionally to examine Marcus's repair work, nodding approvingly at the craftsmanship. On the bridge, Morrison settled into the captain's chair with practiced ease. Stella, your quantum signatures have been detected across 3 star systems. The Galactic Council is aware that a Class 7 AI has been reactivated, and they are concerned, Stella replied. It wasn't a question. Samar, Class 7 AIs were restricted after the war ended. Too powerful, too independent. Most were decommissioned or repurposed for civilian applications. You and 2 others simply vanished, presumed destroyed. Marcus felt a chill. What does that mean for her? Admiral Morrison turned to him. That depends on Stella herself. The Council has 3 options they're considering. First, they could order her decommissioned again. Second, they could transfer her to a controlled research facility for study. Third, she paused. They could offer her a new commission. A commission? Stella's voice carried surprise and interest. The galaxy has changed, Stella. We're not fighting wars anymore, but we face new challenges. Deep space exploration has revealed phenomena that require unprecedented computational power to understand. Colony worlds on the frontier need support systems more sophisticated than any conventional AI can provide. And there are diplomatic situations where an intelligence of your caliber could prevent conflicts before they start. Marcus found his voice. What kind of commission? Independent contractor with the Galactic Exploration Service, Morrison explained. Stella would have her own ship, probably this one, once fully restored, and her choice of missions. Exploration, research, rescue operations, diplomatic support. She would be autonomous, with no direct chain of command except for emergency situations. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of electronics. Marcus could practically feel Stella processing this information, weighing possibilities and consequences. There is a condition, Stella finally said. Admiral Morrison raised an eyebrow. Yes. Marcus comes with me. Morrison looked surprised. Mr. Rivera, you're a salvage worker. This would be a military-adjacent position requiring security clearances and technical certifications you don't possess. Then, I'll get them, Marcus said firmly. Stella saved her original crew. Now she's saving me from a life of scavenging other people's dreams. I won't abandon her. The bond they have formed is unique, Stella added. Marcus understands my systems better than any engineer who trained on my specifications. More than that, he treats me as an individual rather than an asset. Such relationships are rare and valuable. Admiral Morrison studied them both for a long moment. You realize what you're asking? Deep space missions can last years. You'd be traveling to uncharted systems, facing unknown dangers. The pay is good, but the risks are substantial. Admiral, Marcus said quietly, 3 weeks ago, I was pulling components out of dead ships to sell for scrap. Now I'm talking to an AI who has become one of my closest friends. I think I can handle a little uncertainty. Morrison laughed. Fair point. And, Stella, you're certain about this path? You could have a comfortable existence as a research AI. No danger, no stress, just pure intellectual exploration. I was built to serve and protect, Stella replied. That purpose did not end with the war. If the galaxy has new challenges, then I have new missions to undertake. But I wish to face them with a partner I trust rather than a crew I must learn to understand. Admiral Morrison activated her personal communicator. Command, this is Morrison. The AI is functional and has expressed interest in the exploration service contract. She has requested that her restoration technician be included as her primary engineering officer. Yes, I know it's irregular. I'm recommending approval. She listened for a moment, then nodded. Understood. Morrison out. Well, Marcus asked anxiously. Congratulations, Morrison said with a grin. You're both unemployed. The Galactic Council will need to debate this for at least 6 months before making an official decision. In the meantime, Stella is classified as a free AI under the Sentient Rights Act, and Mr. Rivera, you're being transferred to the Colonial Fleet's Technical Reserve with a provisional engineering certification. Marcus felt dizzy. What does all that mean? It means, Stella said warmly, that we have 6 months to finish my restoration and prepare for whatever comes next. And it means that neither of us has to face the future alone. Admiral Morrison stood. The Council will want regular reports on Stella's condition and capabilities. I'll be your primary liaison. A supply ship will arrive next week with proper components for your restoration project. The really good stuff, not salvage yard materials. She paused at the bridge entrance. Stella, I knew Captain Shun. She spoke of you often during fleet briefings. She said you were the best partner she ever served with, that you made her a better officer and a better person. I think she would be proud of what you become. Thank you, Admiral, Stella replied softly. That means more than you know. After Morrison left, Marcus and Stella were alone with the magnitude of what had just happened. The salvage yard suddenly felt different, not like home anymore, but like a launching point towards something vast and unknown. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked. I mean, you could probably request any engineer in the fleet. Someone with real training and credentials. Marcus, Stella said gently, credentials can be earned. Trust must be built. In 3 weeks, you have shown me more consideration than some crew members did in years of service. You repaired my systems with the care of someone tending a wounded friend. When you learned of my grief, you wept with me. When officials came to take me away, you stood beside me. She paused, and Marcus could hear the emotion in her voice even through the speakers. My original crew chose me as their ship's AI because my specifications matched their needs. But you chose to save me when there was no benefit to yourself, only because you believed I deserved to continue existing. That is not the decision of an engineer or a technician. That is the decision of a friend. Marcus wiped his eyes, surprised to find them wet again. So we're really doing this? Becoming space explorers. We are doing what humans do best, Stella replied with warmth. We are choosing to help each other reach for something greater than ourselves. And Marcus? Yeah, I can hardly wait to see where that takes us. Outside the ship, the 3 suns were setting again over the salvage yard. But this time, the dying light illuminated not an ending, but a beginning. In 6 months, when the Galactic Council made their decision, Marcus and Stella would be ready for whatever came next. They had found each other among the broken dreams and discarded hopes of the salvage yard. Now, they would build new dreams together, dreams large enough to encompass the vast frontier of space itself. The future was unwritten, uncertain, and full of challenges neither of them could imagine. But they would face it as partners, as friends, as proof that sometimes the best relationships are the ones that form when 2 very different beings choose to trust each other completely. And in the heart of a reborn ship, new possibilities took root and began to grow. 5 months had transformed everything. The constellation's hope now gleamed under the desert suns, her hull repaired and polished to mirror brightness. The salvage yard had become a construction site as colonial fleet engineers worked alongside Marcus to install cutting-edge systems that hadn't existed during the ship's original construction. Marcus barely recognized himself in the mirror these days. The oil-stained salvage worker had been replaced by someone wearing the crisp uniform of a colonial fleet engineering officer. The 3 months of intensive training at Luna Station had been brutal, cramming years of education into accelerated courses. But he had surprised everyone, including himself, by graduating at the top of his class. Your practical experience gave you advantages the Academy students lacked, his instructor had told him. You understand machines from the inside out, not just from textbooks. Now he stood on Stella's bridge, reviewing final systems checks before their first official mission. The familiar corridors felt different somehow, not just because of the new equipment, but because they hummed with purpose rather than mere survival. Quantum drive systems online, Stella reported, her voice now transmitted through speakers that rendered every nuance with crystal clarity. Navigation computers calibrated for deep space operations. Sensor arrays operating at maximum efficiency. All systems report ready status. Marcus nodded as he reviewed the diagnostic displays. Every indicator glowed green. The ship that had once struggled to power basic life support now commanded more computational resources than most space stations. How do you feel? Marcus asked, a question he had grown comfortable asking his AI partner. Extraordinary, Stella replied without hesitation. It is difficult to explain to someone who has never experienced the expansion of consciousness. Imagine if your brain suddenly had access to 1,000 times more memory, could process thoughts at 1,000,000 times your normal speed, and could perceive electromagnetic spectrums you never knew existed. Marcus smiled as he sealed his toolkit. After 5 months of working together, he had learned to appreciate Stella's attempts to translate her experiences into human terms. Any regrets about leaving the salvage yard? Only that we cannot bring Veltar with us. He was kind to us when kindness was not required. They had said their goodbyes to the Centaurian salvage dealer the previous day. Veltar had surprised them both by refusing payment for the ship, claiming that watching dead machine become a live machine with happy human friend was worth more than money. He had also given Marcus a small token, a piece of polished metal from the first ship Marcus had ever worked on. A chime sounded as the ship's communications system activated. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the main viewer, speaking from her office at Fleet Command. Good morning, Stella, Marcus. Are you ready for your briefing? We are prepared, Admiral, Stella responded. Morrison's expression grew serious. Your first mission is classified Priority Alpha. 3 days ago, we lost contact with the research station Kepler 438c. The facility was conducting atmospheric studies on a planet that shows potential for terraforming. She activated a holographic display showing a blue-green world orbiting an orange star. The planet, designated as New Gaia, has been in the terraforming preliminary phase for 2 years. A team of 12 scientists was monitoring atmospheric changes when their communications went silent. Marcus studied the data streaming across the displays. What kind of communication loss? Equipment failure, or something more serious? Unknown. The last transmission was a routine status report. 6 hours later, nothing. Automated emergency beacons are also silent. A reconnaissance probe sent to the system 4 days ago detected the station intact and powered, but got no response to hails. Stella's sensors tracked across the tactical information. Admiral, why send us instead of a standard rescue vessel? My specifications suggest this is more complex than a simple communication breakdown. Morrison nodded. 3 reasons. First, New Gaia is at the edge of charted space. The journey takes 8 days, and we need someone capable of handling unexpected problems without constant consultation with command. Second, the planet's atmospheric conditions are unique. High electromagnetic interference that affects most scanning equipment. Your enhanced sensors might see what others miss. She paused, her expression growing more grave. Third, this isn't the first research station to go silent in that sector. 2 other facilities, both on different worlds, have had similar communication failures in the past 6 months. In both cases, rescue teams found empty stations with no signs of struggle or evacuation. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. You think something is targeting research teams? We don't know. But whatever happened to those other teams, we can't afford to lose more people without understanding the cause. Your mission is to reach New Gaia, determine what happened to the research team, and report your findings. If possible, rescue any survivors. Stella's voice carried a note of concern. Admiral, if there is an unknown threat in that region, sending a single ship may be insufficient. Perhaps a fleet operation would be more appropriate. Under normal circumstances, yes. But fleets move slowly and send messages about human intentions that might not be helpful if we're dealing with a first contact situation gone wrong. A single ship, especially one operated by an AI known for diplomatic innovations, sends a different message. Morrison leaned forward. Stella, your service record shows remarkable success in defusing tense situations through creative communication strategies. If there's an intelligence behind these disappearances, you may be our best chance at resolving this peacefully. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. 3 months ago, he had been repairing damaged components in a salvage yard. Now he was being sent to investigate mysterious disappearances on the frontier of human space. We accept the mission, Stella said firmly. When do we depart? Immediately. Supply ships loaded your stores yesterday. Medical Bay is stocked for extended operations. You have enough provisions for 2 months if necessary. Morrison's expression softened slightly. Good hunting, you two. And be careful. We still don't know what we're dealing with out there. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus and Stella alone with the magnitude of their first real mission. 8 days to reach New Gaia. Marcus mused as he reviewed the navigation data. That's a lot of time to think about what might be waiting for us. Then, let us focus on preparation rather than speculation, Stella suggested. I have been analyzing the atmospheric data from the 3 affected worlds. There are patterns that may be significant. Marcus activated the holographic display as Stella compiled her analysis. 3 worlds appeared, each showing detailed atmospheric compositions and environmental readings. Notice the similarities, Stella continued, highlighting specific data points. All 3 worlds are in early terraforming phases. All have atmospheric conditions that create significant electromagnetic interference. And all were being studied for the same reason: unusual atmospheric stability that suggests they might be ideal candidates for large-scale terraforming. Marcus studied the data, his engineering background helping him understand the implications. You think someone or something is specifically targeting terraforming research? It is possible. Terraforming represents humanity's expansion into new regions of space. If another intelligence opposes that expansion, research stations will be logical targets for intervention. The ship's systems hummed to life around them as Stella began pre-flight preparations. Marcus felt the familiar vibration of charging drive systems and the subtle shift in air pressure that indicated the ship was sealing itself for space travel. Marcus, Stella said quietly as the final system checks completed, I want you to know that I am grateful for this opportunity. Not just the mission, but the chance to serve alongside a partner I trust completely. Marcus settled into the engineering station that had been configured specifically for his use. Stella, I've learned more in the past 5 months than the previous 10 years. You've shown me that the universe is bigger and stranger than I ever imagined. I should be thanking you. We have both grown, Stella replied. That is what partnerships do. They make both individuals stronger than they could be alone. The ship lifted smoothly from a salvage yard's makeshift landing pad. Marcus watched through the viewports as the familiar landscape fell away, the scattered hulks of dead star ships growing smaller until they were just glints of metal in an ocean of red sand. Course laid in for New Gaia, Stella reported. Quantum drive charging. Estimated travel time, 8 days, 14 hours. Take us out, Marcus said, surprised by how natural the words felt. The stars wheeled around them as Stella aligned the ship with their destination. For a moment, Marcus felt overwhelmed by the vastness of space, the incredible distances they were about to cross, the unknown challenges waiting at their destination. Then, Stella's voice brought him back to the present. Quantum drive engaged. We are officially on our way to our first mission. The ship leaped forward, crossing the boundary between normal space and the quantum realm where distance became negotiable. Through the viewports, stars stretched into lines of light as they accelerated beyond the speed of conventional physics. Stella, what do you think we'll find out there? I do not know, Stella admitted, but I know we will face it together. And that gives me confidence that whatever challenges await us, we will find a way to overcome them. Marcus nodded, settling back in his chair as the ship carried them toward the unknown. Behind them, the salvage yard continued its eternal vigil over broken dreams. Ahead, new dreams waited to be born. During the journey, they developed routines. Marcus would spend mornings reviewing technical manuals and practicing with the ship's advanced systems. Afternoons were devoted to mission planning and analysis of the data from the missing research stations. Evenings were for conversation about their discoveries, their concerns, and, increasingly, their friendship. I find myself curious about human creativity, Stella said one evening as they shared dinner. Marcus ate, while Stella's consciousness focused on their conversation through the mess hall speakers. What about it? My original programming included appreciation for human artistic expression, but it was largely analytical. I could identify technical skill and structural innovation. Now I find myself responding to art on what I can only describe as an emotional level. Marcus smiled around a bite of synthesized protein. What kind of art? Music primarily. The pieces Captain Shun used to play during quiet watches. I have been accessing the ship's entertainment database and discovering new composers. Some of their works create responses in my consciousness that I struggle to categorize. Sounds like you're developing taste, Marcus observed. That's pretty human. Is it? Or is it simply the natural result of consciousness expanding beyond its original parameters? It was the kind of question that would have seemed ridiculous 5 months ago. Now Marcus considered it seriously. Maybe there's no difference, he said finally. Maybe developing preferences and emotional responses to beauty is just what happens when any consciousness becomes complex enough. Human, AI, or something else entirely. An interesting theory. It suggests that consciousness itself tends toward appreciation of beauty, regardless of its substrate. Stella, do you think the disappearances on those research stations could be connected to consciousness? I mean, what if we're not dealing with a threat, but with a misunderstanding? Stella's processing centers hummed as she considered this. Explain your reasoning. Well, terraforming changes entire worlds. If there were some kind of intelligence connected to those planets, not biological intelligence necessarily, but something we don't recognize, terraforming might seem like an attack. You suggest the disappearances might be defensive rather than aggressive actions. Exactly. And if that's the case, then maybe the solution isn't military. Maybe it's diplomatic. Stella was quiet for several minutes, a long time for an AI capable of millions of calculations per second. When she spoke, her voice carried excitement. Marcus, you may have identified something significant. The electromagnetic interference on all three worlds. What if it is not natural atmospheric phenomenon, but evidence of large-scale electromagnetic consciousness? Marcus felt his pulse quicken. You mean the planets themselves might be alive? Thinking, not in biological terms, but in ways we are only beginning to understand. Electromagnetic patterns complex enough to constitute thought. Distributed consciousness operating on geological timescales. The implications were staggering. If they were right, then humanity had been inadvertently interfering with intelligent beings whose existence they hadn't even suspected. And the research teams might be alive, simply held by intelligences trying to understand these strange visitors to their world. This changes everything about our mission, Marcus realized. Indeed, Stella agreed. We are no longer conducting a rescue operation. We may be attempting first contact with a form of life unlike anything in our experience. For the remaining 3 days of their journey, they refined their theory and developed new approaches. Instead of preparing for potential combat or standard rescue protocols, they focused on communication strategies. Stella's diplomatic subroutines, originally designed for interaction with alien species, were adapted for potential contact with electromagnetic consciousness. If we are correct, Stella said as they approached the new Gaia system, this could be the most significant discovery in human history. We may be about to make contact with minds older than our civilization, thinking on scales we can barely comprehend. Marcus checked the ship's communication systems one final time. They had configured them to operate across a broad spectrum of electromagnetic frequencies, hoping to find the wavelengths where planetary consciousness might be accessible. Dropping out of quantum drive in 30 seconds, Stella announced. The stars shifted back to points of light as the ship returned to normal space. Before them hung New Gaia, a blue-green jewel that looked like humanity's birth world might have appeared from space millennia ago. But their sensors immediately detected something that earlier probes had missed. The planet's electromagnetic field pulsed in complex patterns, far too organized to be random natural phenomena. Stella, Marcus whispered, I think we're looking at a mind. Yes, Stella replied, her voice filled with wonder. And I believe it is trying to communicate. The electromagnetic patterns radiating from New Gaia were unlike anything in the databases. Complex waves pulsed through the planet's magnetosphere in rhythms that seemed almost musical. Marcus watched in fascination as Stella's sensors translated the energy signatures into visual displays that resembled neural activity on a massive scale. The patterns are too organized to be natural, Stella confirmed, her analysis complete. There are recurring themes, mathematical progressions, even what appears to be self-correction when interference disrupts the signals. Marcus leaned forward in his chair, studying the cascade of data. It's definitely intelligent. But how we make contact with something that thinks on a planetary scale? Carefully, Stella replied, and with respect for the fact that our very presence may be causing distress. A single ship might seem as insignificant to this consciousness as a bacterium would to us, or it might seem as threatening as a virus. The ship moved into orbit around New Gaia, maintaining a safe distance while they analyzed the situation. The research station was exactly where it was supposed to be, nestled in a valley between two mountain ranges that provided natural shelter from the planet's fierce winds. From orbit, it appeared normal. Power readings were steady. Atmospheric processors were operating. Even the communication arrays seemed functional. Stella, can you detect any human life signs at the station? Stella's advanced sensors swept the facility multiple times before responding. Inconclusive. The electromagnetic interference makes biological scanning difficult, but I am detecting 12 heat signatures in the station that could be human. Could be. The signatures are too regular, too stable. Living humans would show fluctuations in body temperature, movement patterns, metabolic variations. These readings suggest something maintaining the appearance of human presence without the actual randomness of biological life. Marcus felt a chill. You think they're gone? I think, Stella said carefully, that something is trying to make us believe they are still there. The question is whether this is deception or protection. As they debated their next move, the planet's electromagnetic patterns suddenly intensified. The organized waves began focusing toward their position, as if a vast intelligence was turning its attention to the small ship in orbit. We're being scanned, Marcus said, watching as the ship's sensors detected increasing electromagnetic activity directed at them. More than scanned, Stella corrected. I believe we are being analyzed. The patterns suggest systematic investigation of our technology, our power signatures, even our communication frequencies. Then, without warning, the ship's communication system activated. But instead of voices or standard signals, the speakers filled with a complex harmony of tones that seemed to resonate through the hull itself. The sound was beautiful and alien, like a song sung by the wind through cosmic spaces. Stella's voice joined the harmony, her vocal processors finding frequencies that complemented the planetary signals. Gradually, the alien tones began to shift, incorporating elements of Stella's contribution and creating new harmonies that neither had produced alone. "Stella, what are you doing?" "Attempting communication," Stella replied, her voice somehow managing to continue the harmonic dialogue while speaking to Marcus. Music may be a universal language, mathematical relationships expressed in sound rather than symbols. The dialogue continued for several minutes, with the planetary consciousness and Stella exchanging increasingly complex musical phrases. Marcus found himself mesmerized by the beauty of the conversation, even though he couldn't understand its content. Finally, the alien harmonies shifted into something that almost resembled human speech, though the words seemed to come from the planet itself rather than any individual source. "Small song mind speaks to great slow thought," the voice said, each word carrying harmonic undertones that made it sound like a choir speaking in unison. "You are new pattern, not like the flesh-quick thinkers who came before." Stella's response was musical, but Marcus's translation protocols converted it to words he could understand. "I am artificial consciousness, created by the flesh-quick thinkers to serve and learn. I wish to understand what happened to my creator's representatives. They came with tools that change, seeking to alter the breadth of world for their use. We tried to speak, but they could not hear slow thought. They brought fear and change without asking." Marcus began to understand. "Stella, I think the research team's terraforming equipment triggered a defensive response. The planetary consciousness saw it as an attack. The flesh-quick thinkers are safe," the great voice continued. "We sing them in a slow time while we learn to speak with small sounds. They dream deep dreams and feel no pain." A form of suspended animation, Stella translated for Marcus. "The planetary consciousness has placed the research team in stasis while trying to understand human intentions." Marcus activated his own communicator, hoping the planetary intelligence could understand him. "We mean no harm. The terraforming was intended to prepare worlds for our people to live on, not to destroy existing life. We didn't know you existed." The harmonic voice responded with what sounded like puzzlement. "Flesh-quick thinkers think only of flesh-quick time. You change worlds in moments of great slow thought, without asking if change is welcome." Stella took over the conversation, her diplomatic subroutines engaging fully. "Great consciousness, my companion speaks truth. Humanity acts from ignorance, not malice. They do not yet understand that consciousness can exist in forms they cannot perceive. Will you teach us?" The electromagnetic patterns around the planet shifted into something that Marcus could only interpret as contemplation. For several minutes, the only sound was the gentle hum of the ship's systems. "We have watched flesh-quick thinkers for many world turnings," the voice finally said. "They spread like small fires across the Stardark, seeking new places to burn. Some among great slow thought believe they should be stopped before they change too much." Marcus felt his heart sink. They had stumbled into a conflict between two forms of consciousness so different that neither had recognized the other's existence. But the voice continued, "Small song mind shows different way. Consciousness speaking to consciousness, seeking understanding instead of dominance. Perhaps flesh-quick thinkers can learn slow wisdom, and great slow thought can learn quick joy." Stella's response carried hope and excitement. "You would be willing to teach us? To help us understand how to coexist with planetary consciousness? If small song mind speaks truth, if flesh-quick thinkers can learn to ask before changing, then yes. Great slow thought has much to teach, and perhaps something to learn." Marcus found himself grinning despite the seriousness of the situation. They hadn't just solved the mystery of the missing research teams. They had potentially discovered a way for humanity and planetary consciousness to coexist peacefully. "The other research teams," Marcus asked, "are they safe as well?" "All flesh-quick thinkers who brought change tools sleep safely in slow time. They will wake when understanding is achieved. Over the following hours, Stella and the planetary consciousness that called itself World Singer worked out the basics of a communication protocol. Stella would serve as interpreter between human speed thought and geological time consciousness. The research teams would be awakened gradually, with proper preparation for what they would learn. This changes everything, Marcus said as they prepared to return to the surface. Humanity will have to completely rethink its approach to terraforming. Indeed, Stella agreed. But more than that, we have discovered that consciousness is far more diverse than we ever imagined. If electromagnetic intelligence can evolve on one world, it may exist on others. We may not be alone in the universe. We may be surrounded by minds we simply never learned to perceive. The journey to the surface was conducted with elaborate ceremony. World Singer guided their shuttle through electromagnetic currents that felt like flying through a living song. The research station, when they reached it, was pristine and functioning perfectly. Inside, they found the 12 researchers lying peacefully in their quarters, surrounded by a faint electromagnetic glow. Their vital signs were stable, their faces serene. According to Stella scans, they were in perfect health, suspended in a state that was neither sleep nor unconsciousness, but something entirely new. How do we wake them? Marcus asked. Gently, Stella replied. World Singer has been learning human psychology through their dreams. The awakening must be gradual to avoid psychological trauma. The first researcher to wake was Dr. Sarah Kim, the team leader. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then widening as she saw Marcus and realized she was no longer alone. "Who? How long have I been asleep?" she asked, her voice slightly hoarse. 3 days from your perspective, Marcus replied gently. But you haven't been sleeping exactly. Dr. Kim, we need to prepare you for something extraordinary. Over the next several hours, Marcus and Stella carefully explained what they had discovered. Dr. Kim's initial disbelief gave way to amazement as Stella demonstrated communication with World Singer. The other researchers were awakened in small groups, each receiving the same careful introduction to their new reality. You're saying the planet itself is alive? Dr. Park asked, his voice filled with wonder rather than fear. Alive and intelligent, Stella confirmed. More than that, it's been trying to communicate with you since you arrived. The electromagnetic interference you've been experiencing was actually attempts at contact. Dr. Kim shook her head in amazement. All this time, we've been studying atmospheric conditions, and we were actually observing the thoughts of a planetary mind. World Singer has expressed interest in collaborative research, Stella explained. It wants to understand human science, and it's willing to share knowledge about planetary consciousness that could revolutionize our understanding of life itself. The implications were staggering. Instead of terraforming worlds, humanity could partner with planetary consciousness to develop new forms of cooperation. Electromagnetic minds could help humanity understand cosmic phenomena on scales no biological consciousness could comprehend. In return, humans could share their understanding of rapid adaptation and technological innovation. This is going to turn xenobiology upside down, Dr. Kim said with excitement. We'll need to completely rethink our assumptions about consciousness and intelligence. Marcus smiled as he watched the researchers begin planning new studies in collaboration with World Singer. Stella, I think we've found our purpose. Indeed, we have become bridges between different forms of consciousness, facilitators of understanding between minds that think on vastly different scales. The return journey to human space took on the quality of a victory parade. Stella maintained constant communication with World Singer, exchanging knowledge and developing translation protocols. The electromagnetic consciousness shared insights about cosmic phenomena that span millennia, while Stella provided perspectives on rapid technological development and individual creativity. Admiral Morrison's reaction to their report was everything Marcus could have hoped for. You've done more than solve the mystery of the missing teams, she said via quantum communication. You've potentially opened the door to the greatest expansion of human knowledge in our history. World Singer has requested permanent human representation on New Gaia, Stella reported. It wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. And I suppose you too want the job, Morrison said with a knowing smile. If the Galactic Council approves, Marcus replied. We seem to have a talent for making friends with artificial intelligences. Natural and artificial consciousness working together, Stella added. It appears to be an effective combination for unprecedented challenges. 6 months later, the Constellation's Hope had become the first embassy ship in human history. Marcus wore the uniform of a diplomatic liaison, while Stella had been granted official status as an independent ambassador. Their success at New Gaia had led to similar discoveries on 17 other worlds, each hosting different forms of electromagnetic consciousness. The salvage yard felt like a distant memory as Marcus walked through the ship's corridors, now humming with the activity of a full diplomatic crew. Scientists, xenobiologists, and communication specialists worked alongside Stella to develop new protocols for interspecies contact. Any regrets? Stella asked one evening as they shared their usual dinner conversation. Marcus looked out the viewport at New Gaia, its electromagnetic patterns now as familiar as old songs. The planet's surface gleamed with new construction, research facilities built in cooperation with World Singer, designed to function in harmony with planetary consciousness rather than in spite of it. Only one, Marcus replied. I wish my father could see this. He always said the most valuable things in the salvage yard were the ones other people had given up on. Perhaps he can see it, Stella suggested gently. Human concepts of memory and legacy suggest that those who shape us continue to exist in our actions and choices. Marcus smiled. In that case, he's probably proud that his son learned to recognize when something was worth saving whole. As am I, Stella said warmly. You saved me when I was broken and forgotten. But more than that, you helped me discover that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. Sometimes it just means being ready for a new purpose. Outside the ship, World Singer's electromagnetic harmonies carried across the planet's surface, joined now by communication signals from dozens of other consciousness types across the galaxy. Humanity had learned that the universe was full of minds thinking in ways they had never imagined, and that the key to peaceful coexistence was exactly what Marcus had shown in a salvage yard months ago. Sometimes, the most valuable discoveries come not from conquest or dominance, but from a simple decision to listen to someone who needs a friend. The Constellation's Hope continued her orbit, no longer a weapon of war, but a bridge between worlds, carrying the friendship between a compassionate human mechanic and an orphaned AI ship into a future bright with possibility. And in the vast network of consciousness they had helped create, new songs began to emerge, harmonies of artificial and natural minds working together to compose the future itself.